The Smithsonian Roosevelt African Expedition was an expedition to Africa led by Theodore Roosevelt and outfitted by the Smithsonian Institution. Its purpose was to collect specimens for the Smithsonian's new Natural History Museum, now known as the National Museum of Natural History. The expedition collected around 11,400 animal specimens, which took Smithsonian naturalists 8 years to catalogue. Timeline and route. The party set sail from New York City on the steamer Hamburg on March 23, 1909, shortly after the end of Roosevelt's presidency. The party landed in Mombasa, British East Africa, traveled to the Belgian Congo before following the Nile to Khartoum in modern Sudan. Financed by Andrew Carnegie and by his own proposed writings, Roosevelt's party hunted for specimens for the Smithsonian Institution and for the American Museum of Natural History in New York. Results: Roosevelt and his companions killed and trapped approximately 11,397 animals. According to Theodore Roosevelt's own tally, the figure included about 4,000 birds, 2,000 reptiles and amphibians, 500 fish, and 4,897 mammals. Add to this marine, land and freshwater shells, crabs, beetles and other invertebrates, not to mention several thousand plants, and the number of natural history specimens totals 23,151. A separate collection was made of ethnographic objects. The material took 8 years to catalogue. The larger animals shot by Theodore and Kermit Roosevelt are listed on pages 457 to 459 of his book African Game Trails. The total is 512, of which 43 are birds. The number of big game animals killed was 17 lion, 3 leopard, 7 cheetah, 9 hyena, 11 elephant, 10 buffalo, 11 black rhino and 9 white rhino. Most of the 469 larger non-big game mammals included 37 species and subspecies of antelopes. The expedition consumed 262 of the animals which were required to provide fresh meat for the large number of porters employed to service the expedition. Tons of salted animals and the skins were shipped to Washington, D.C. The quantity took years to mount them all, and the Smithsonian shared many duplicate animals with other museums. Regarding the large number of animals taken, Roosevelt said, "I can be condemned only if the existence of the National Museum, the American Museum of Natural History, and all similar zoological institutions are to be condemned." Quote, "In assessing whether the toll of animals was excessive, it should be noted that the animals taken spanned a period of 10 months, and were procured over an area that ranged from Mombasa through Kenya to Uganda and the southern Sudan, a distance traveled, with side trips, of several thousand kilometers. The diversity of larger mammal species collected was such that few individuals of any species were shot in any given area, and the large mammals collected had a negligible impact on the great herds of game that roamed East Africa at the time." Apologists for the Roosevelts have pointed out that the number of each big game species shot was very modest by the standards of the time. Many white hunters of that period, for example, such as Karamoja Bell, had killed over 1,000 elephants each, while the Roosevelts between them killed just 11. In making this comparison, it has to be remembered that the white hunters weren't collecting specimens for museums, but were employed by landowners to clear animals from land they wanted to use for plantations. Although the safari was conducted in the name of science, it was as much a political and social event as it was a hunting excursion. Roosevelt interacted with renowned professional hunters and land-owning families, and met many native native peoples and local leaders. Roosevelt became a life member of the National Rifle Association while president in 1907 after paying a $25 fee. He later wrote a detailed account in the book African Game Trails, where he describes the excitement of the chase, the people he met, and the flora and fauna he collected in the name of science. Theodore Roosevelt, like many hunters, enjoyed hunting, but was also a conservationist. In African Game Trails he condemns game butchery as objectionable as any form of wanton cruelty and barbarity, and as a pioneer of wilderness conservation in the USA he fully supported the British government's attempts at the time to set aside wilderness areas as game reserves, some of the first on the African continent. He notes that, in the creation of the Great Game Reserve through which the Uganda Railway runs, the British government has conferred a boon upon mankind, a conservation attitude which Roosevelt helped sow that finally grew and blossomed in the form of the great game parks of East Africa today.